So, hi, I'm John Quinn, Director of Science and Product Development at FlowJo. And today I want to just give you all a look at the work that we've done on FlowJo version 11. Um, oops. It is not yet released. I'm going to be showing you the candidate release. I'm going to do the big reveal at Saito this year as our commercial tutorial. And so that's going to be the real formal one with the formal release and so forth. But for anyone who's joined today, I just want to open up the software and show you how it works and show you the primary components and talk a little bit about what we were thinking when we designed it. I know there is great fear that a new version will look way, way different, and it does look way, way different. I will make the claim that if you've ever used FlowJo before and you just start doing what you expect to do, it will do what you expect to do. Fingers crossed. Let's talk about it. Okay, so I am going to share my screen and I'm going to keep the chat up as well so that if questions come in, I can see them live. Okay, there's the chat, and we can talk about them uh, as we hit them. Okay, so just opened up FlowJo 11 here, and very different appearance. Got it. Um, Amongst the things that you can see immediately are that we've gone dark mode. That is a choice. Within FlowJo 11, there are a variety of views and themes. And so personally, I am in Tangerine. I see Serena is on the call. If we want, we can show either Serena light mode or Serena dark mode. So you've got your choice of how you like to work. I am a dark mode person through and through. So I'm going to stick with my Tangerine, which I think really lights up nicely some of the highlights and so forth. Okay, quick overview. There is the hierarchy. So you'll notice it is divided up into three parts as opposed to it used to be two. We have decided to make the populations, the things you see when you make a gate, a separate section where we pick the sample you want to look at a population on and match it up with the gating tree as opposed to showing the same gating tree over and over again to make this a little more concise. It is immersive, so it takes up the whole screen, and the way we allocate space is through opening and closing any of the side panels. So you can allocate space as you choose to. Okay, the main the main part of the workbench here, the center of the screen, is where all the work's happen. We call it a workbench. It's meant to emulate your bench in your laboratory, where the main work is done in the middle, and you keep your tools to the left and to the right, and so forth. The properties panel over here, generally, no matter what view you're looking at, has a few different options, and you can control the things happening in the workbench via the tools on the right, aka like a lab bench. Okay, let's get some data in here. Okay, so boom, 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 data added, and I want to point out, scroll that down. Okay, oops, and I'm on the image wall. Let's do the graph gallery to start. Okay, I want to point out that I added a folder called my multi-disease study data. This is some data that came out of Fred Hutch, a really nice data set comparing COVID versus flu versus healthy and RSV. And each one of these have sorry, I just saw a couple questions get in. When is this version getting released? We plan to put it out the end of the month. I want to show up at Saito on May 31st and have released version 11. Uh, Reporting for a GMP mindset. So I will mention, Lucas Black, that we are RUO only, so the GMP and the CFR 11, etc., are limited, but we do have a full, well, not that a lot's been done yet, a full history on the undo list that it serves as an audit trail that you can go back to specific spots on in this one. That is probably about as good as I can do for the time being. Okay, so I dragged in a folder that had subfolders, COVID, flu, healthy, RSV, etc., where each of the 20 samples that were full stained were divided up sets of five. And so you can see that we've switched to having a hierarchical version of groups as well. So we've always used hierarchies throughout FlowJo. I think it's been a common request to make the groups hierarchy also, so you can do things like add gates and stats to the full stain level, see them propagate down to the subgroups, but then at any point you'll see, and let me close up one of the side windows here to really emphasize it, I can go down and highlight just the samples in my subgroups using this group tool, and it's going to show everything. There's the list of like flu 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the plots for flu 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just based on the selection. Okay. There's a question about whether this presentation will be recorded. We record all of our webinars, and for the same page you went to join the webinar, you will see a list of previously recorded. It probably goes up a couple of times. Okay. And USB dongles, good questions. I glanced over that part. Do I still have it up? Sorry, no, we are switching entirely to doing portal authentication. And when you install the software, and I think I have an installer laying around. So if you double click on that, you will get two programs to install, FlowJo 11 and the BD Access portal. This is going to be the tool that I think is authenticating essentially all the software that we do from here on out. It's built in. When I opened it up, it pops up with a little side panel that just assigns it to the Access portal, but it is a separate program that you have to have running. And it is Mac and Windows, and it looks identical in the two. I work continuously on Mac and Windows. I should mention that this is my little Mac laptop. I have a big PC on the desk next to me with an enormous screen. Um, a bigger screen is nicer. I mean, that's always been true throughout the history of the world in computers. It really does work very nicely with this version if you've got a little extra screen space, but this is a small laptop, and so this is what I expect a lot of people will be using on, so let's demo on this. Okay. So that is, okay, noting again, we've got ungated, haven't put any gates on, that we're looking at a specific population and isolating using the groups over here to show which samples we're working on. And we can use the control here to pick a specific one of those samples and display that in the primary plot. You can also, if you want, within the graph gallery down here, pick a specific sample, and that will also make it appear in the primary plot. Okay. Yes, if you're authenticating via a dongle, you would have to purchase a separate license. You can also trade in a dongle to get a certain amount of time on the subscription, which is used to authenticate both version 10 and 11. Which brings me to an important question. People will be using 11, people will be using 10. A FlowJo subscription license just gets you whatever version of FlowJo you want, so you actually will have the ability to use either 10 or 11. 11 is brand new. 10 had, I think, geez, what, 11, 12 years of development. There are definitely things we haven't got to in version 11 yet. We've built in as many of the tools that used to be plugins as possible, but not all of them are available. And so if you come to a spot where there's something you want to do in 10, your same license will authenticate 10 without any further purchase price. So yes, if you are a dongle user and you want to use 11, it will be time to trade the dongle in and go subscription. If you are a 10 user, then you have access to 11. Sorry, 10 user via the FlowJo portal, you just have access as soon as we release it. Good questions, everybody. I forgot some of my spiel at the front that I should have done about, the ho-hum bits of licensing and so forth that are actually super important that I should have mentioned. Okay. You'll see that I'm excited about the new software and I just want to get into it. All right. So I think that is good enough for the description of the hierarchy for now. Once we actually put some gates on it, we'll get to it. I guess not entirely. I should have mentioned that the top level is now called acquired data, and it immediately divvies up the data into compensation / unmixing versus experiment data. There's a separate bin where we'll put all our compensation matrices in. Right now, there's just the one acquisition defined. And within the compensation data, we also support a hierarchy so that if you bring in multiple experiments, you will also have the comp controls separate on a per experiment basis, and you'll see the names match at the top level folder. Okay. Good question, Ellen. Will we be able to open the v10 workspaces on the v11 version of the software? In 11.0, you will not. Sorry, haven't brought in the read all the old software functions yet. We will get that in ASAP. You can hit a File Save Workbench to version 10 option right here out of the File menu, so that if you try something in V10 and you're working along and you decide there's a tool that was missing, we're still trying to make an improved version of the cell cycle model, for example, you can essentially bail out to V10 and finish the work there. Haven't worked it out to go forward yet. So for the time being, V11 will be starting new experiments tool, and we will definitely build in the ability to read V10 workspaces. Good question. Okay, so that is the rest of the structure here. Acquired data leads to either comp or experiment data. We're using the same basic strategy to identify compensation data, in that if I click on it, it's got the word comp or unstained in the name of the file. Okay, so there's that. Let's talk about the tools down the left side here, which are essentially your order of operations. So metadata, quality control, compensation or unmixing, the graph gallery, which we're in right away because we wanted to see pictures of all our plots, any platforms that we're going to add, which at the moment consist of tsne and xshift, tables, charts, and reports. Okay, let's start with Metadata Manager. So to emphasize how important it is, I think, to add good annotation to your data, we've made it the first thing on the list, the top of the here's my workflow through my data. We start you by looking at your pictures because everyone wants to see pictures right away, but the first thing in the workflow is metadata. Okay, and at the moment we're on comp controls, so let us switch over to the actual full stain stuff. So note what I just did there, by the way. I'm using the hierarchy on the left to control everything. Uh, we've always in FlowJo had a variety of drop-down menus where you tried to specify what population it is you wanted something to apply to. I feel like we've got this, we'll have a fully fleshed out hierarchy over here. Once we put some gates on, there'll be gates too. Let's use it. Let's use it for everything. So whenever you're going to do some kind of population selection, group selection, the hierarchy is live. When you click on it, it works to change the focus of the primary window. So we've just changed the focus of what keywords are we showing from the comp controls to the full stained just by clicking in the hierarchy. Okay, so you've got a list of all the samples and a scrollable list of keywords here that we can go through, which are really nice if you want to compare a handful of keywords across all the samples. You can also pivot the table if you would like to see all of the keywords and compare across however many samples fit in your window. And this is scrollable as well. You can also do stuff like, let's go over back to that pivoted view and filter by, and I'll type in the $sign, and that just gets you anything that has a $sign in the name of the keyword. You can obviously also check within keywords if you'd like to filter based on that. So I think that was some pretty nice work by Mache Sims to make this all work well. Okay, let us move on. Parameters. If you want to modify any of the names of the parameters, there's just a tool within the metadata manager to work on that. So you've got the PNN, essentially the stain, and the target over here, and there's a pencil that you can use to overwrite. I choose not to overwrite these, but if you do have some kind of template that you're maybe working on collaborators with and people use slightly different names for a given target, it's fixable. Okay, one that I really would like to point out here is the parameter sets. So Flow data is just getting bigger. One of the primary reasons that we made an entirely new version 11 on a completely new tech stack, is that data is getting bigger. And we also want to make sure that just because the list of parameters are getting bigger, you can get down to very specific sets of parameters to use over and over and over again. Question from Natalie, which actually sort of ties in here as well. Will we need to use a separate plugin to see S8 images? No, actually we have an image viewer built in. And I will at the end just dump some image data in to show off the tools for imaging. The plugin for version 10 will, at the release of 11.0, have some extra functionality. We haven't built in the sortable image walls, for example, but it'll come. It'll come. There'll be an 11.1 at some point after 11.0, and we'll just keep layering in functionality. But yeah, wanted to make sure we put it all in here. Question on will the imaging data take image stream? Not at this time. It's within the realm of possibility, to figure out the compaction algorithm that they use for other cytometers. For the time being, we are just spending our time making sure that the S8 and A8 data work, as all the great requests for features that are coming in into the chat are all things we want to do, and it's just a matter of prioritization. There's a lot to do. Can you perform a parameter path here? I'm not sure what perform a parameter path here is. Maria, if you would mind explaining. Oh, parameter math. Okay, so creating like derived parameters. No, we have not built that one in yet. No, no problem. I'm sorry on me for not having built in parameter math at this point. You can create some derived parameters, but that'll usually be from doing something like clustering or a t-SNE dimensionality reduction. Okay, sorry. Parameter sets. If I want to pick a certain set of parameters and use these to highlight those parameters anywhere in the program, I can do so right here. There are a bunch of default parameter sets built in. When we go back to the graphs, we'll see that there's like compensated, scatter. There's one for imaging if you happen to be an S8 or A8 user, but you can make your own custom ones. And so maybe I'm going to pick out some parameters. Let's go with TIM3, CD27. How about some TCR gamma delta, lag3, granzyme B, 67. Oh, let's not miss CCR7. Boom, boom. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to add selected here, and then I'll give it a name. You could just leave it called parameter set, but I'm going to call these T cell functional markers, and that'll appear throughout the rest of the program. So, for example, if we go back to the graphs, um, and we're on full stained, you'll see that by default, it is showing all the parameters here. But from either this spot on the dropdown, I could go down and pick out a particular subset, so like T cell functional, and then our dropdown is limited to just the ones that I just specified in the parameter set. Let's clear that and just go back to all. Or properties panel, control the main panel. There is an entire parameter set one here. So I could, for example, on the y-axis, choose to show only the T cell functional, and I can control what is appearing on the graph by navigating through this side window. So we would like to use parameter sets all over the place to make this a little easier to handle big data with a ton of parameters. You can pick your parameter set for the right time to the right use. Elise, I see the question, or sorry, Alice. I see the question on using pestle and spice separately with the FlowJo 11. No, finally, a feature question that I can answer affirmatively. Yes, when we get to charts, I will show you that we have built the charts in, and I love pestle and spice. I do. That's the great work by Maru at the NIH, and you'll see that there's some similarities because I love them so much. Okay, um, so the files from version 10 will not immediately be compatible in version 11. I see that question coming in repeatedly. Not yet. We will do that. Clearly, my first feedback from doing this webinar is that that is a feature that people would like to be able to import older workspaces into 11. There is some difficulty in doing that, and that the structure of the hierarchy, well, is now hierarchical. There's a lot of things that just are in 11 that aren't in 10 and vice versa at this point. We figured that would be something that would be better served waiting till we had some more overlapping functionality. Okay, so we looked at the first step, metadata, and I'm at 10:20, so I better get moving. Let's look at the second item on here, quality control. So we have quality control built in now, and I think you'll like this one in that it is going to be just way faster. The algorithm that we're using is similar to Flow AI in that it's going to look for. I really like that Flow AI looked for signal stability. It checked your flow rate for consistency, and it looked for dynamic range checks, so cells on either edge of the plot, and it had some nice tunability. I know there are folks who are Peacock devotees and FlowCut devotees and so forth. We will work on adding options, but you'll find there's a consistency through what I talk about today, and it's that I picked my favorite and I made sure that we put one of pretty much every kind of tool in, and we will add choices as we move forward so that you can, fingers crossed, get through your whole workflow And if you really, really want a specific algorithm, then version 10 will be available for that algorithm. But I think you're going to like this one. Okay, so we have the choice of parameters. If you want, you can select, deselect everything using those checkboxes. You can select individual or multiple parameters to look at. We just display the uncompensated slash raw up at the top, as that is what Flow AI or this Flow AI-like program is best used on. You've got the same kinds of choices. The remove outliers button, I think, is generally an important one that you'll want to check on. That allows individual moments of signal instability to be treated as an outlier and not chosen as a threshold moment for all events after. I'm going to hit apply, and what it says in the bit here that I've just covered up with the applying is that we will automatically apply QC to everything in the experimental data group. So as I hit this and it runs, it's something like 30 seconds to QC all 20 files of this is like a 30 something parameter data set. So it's an enormous data set that gets QC'd in the time that most of the QC plugins would have taken to do one file. Okay. And going back to our theme of the hierarchy controls everything. So I'm over here, I'm looking at a plot of, the first sample here of COVID-1. I can scroll to look at the signal stability of any given parameter. I can give that particular screen advocacy over the entire middle panel. I can always make these wider, etc., by closing anything up on the side. And then I can use the hierarchy to control which sample it is I'm looking for. If I want to go directly to a specific sample, I can also just use the advance arrows to move back and forth through the data. For our initial plot here, where we're showing the overlay, it's time versus, and then you can choose your y-axis for whatever you would like to do. Okay. And all right, so Mitch had a question. Serena hit it. Yeah. So QC's been in for a little bit. Worries about the beta version are going to end in about 2 weeks when this is the released version. Okay. So the other thing I'd really like to point out on QC is that the experiment data group is colored white. You'll see we've got other colored groups to indicate where a gate belongs to a particular group. But down here, we are clicked on full stain, but we're showing that the good events and bad events identified by the QC algorithm have come from the experimental data group. And so they have applied to everything downstream of experiment data. And so, as the names imply, good events is where you want to live, and that's what you can start moving forward to. All right, moving down our workflow, I'm getting to compensation slash unmixing. Let's see. So there's a question from Maria, an interesting question for QC. How do we report that for a publication if things were excluded? Um, the things that we've always suggested for folks to use in a publication is that they ran a QC algorithm, and it's generally a particular algorithm. I guess we should give ours a name other than kind of like Flow AI, um, so that you can tell which algorithm you used and which settings that you used. So you would say, I ran this algorithm, I used all the defaults, or I ran this algorithm, I used all the defaults plus turned on remove outliers. And then it's up to you how intent, because that's, the general bit of reporting is that someone can reproduce your work. And if you give those ideas, that'll be, that'll be enough to reproduce your work. Let's see. And if you want to give performance metrics, you can. We have stats throughout the program that you could report the percent good events, the number of good events, et cetera, et cetera. There's a question on what if QC fails? So if QC fails, that implies there was something inherently wrong with the data. Um, the one place that might not be true. So yeah, I mean, a QC should just give you a result. And even if it's like most of the events were bad, you should see a result. The one place where you might not see a QC result at all, or it might just plain fail, is if the data file you're using does not have a time parameter. We run into it occasionally, where time is either um, recorded, but the name is something we couldn't figure out was time. There's a few cytometers. I think we've tried to get them all that use a odd names that are not just time. But that's the thing to look at. Okay. How's the performance of FlowJo 11 running at a VDI? I assume that's something virtual. Can you give a recommendation addressing the hardware for workstations and also server-based user workarounds, VDI? So there we go. We got an explanation for there. So performance is good. Everything that I'm doing here, I'm doing on in the entire experiment. So if, I don't know if you're thinking, well, this looks about the same. We're also working at the entire experiment level all the time. So it's one of the reasons we wrote a whole new version was that we wanted to increase performance. So I think that's what we're working for. Oh, QC on non-Unicode characters. I would assume no, but I am not positive. I would assume if it's not Unicode, we're never going to read that file. Um, okay. All right. Good advice from Will. Performance on a server. Um, You'd have to set it up on the server, and it'll depend on the quality of your server. More is generally more. We generally recommend that you've got at least 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is, true for most modern computers, even, you know, even a even a laptop at this point. More is more. Okay, let's do some unmixing. Okay, I will click on unmixing. It'll say, hey, pick a group. Right now you're on full stained. I'm like, that seems wrong. Let us pick comp controls. Cool. It's going to produce the matrix called matrix. And we can rename that if we want at any point, but fine for now. I'm going to say next. It's going to think for a moment, and then it is going to go through the list of controls in the comp controls group. It is going to assign them. We are in spectral mode by default, a primary detector. Again, not super important what the primary detector is, but you'd like to be relatively close. It's going to auto gate them to the extent that is required by your choice. Auto spill is on by default. So made the choice just to go auto spill spectral as the default. It's there. The superset that should generally always work. If you've got workable controls, you can always switch back to traditional just by clicking the button. That won't have a big impact until you ask it to actually do the math. Or auto spill off, and you will see when we go to auto spill off, all of a sudden a negative gate appears. I'm a big auto spill fan. I'm going to leave it on, and we'll talk through the differences there first. Okay, so with auto spill on, I've got each of these controls assigned. I've got a graph of the one I've highlighted. You can click down to other graphs. You can use the left right if you want to move to other samples. You've got a spectral plot up here. Now, of some interest is that auto spill does not use the positive negative gates. It uses just your size gate. It is going to do a linear regression of all the events in the size gates. We actually don't need it, but we see a positive gate drawn, and that's just to make the spectral plot look a little more useful. We found that if you just show a spectral plot of all cells in the cleanup gate, it's just all over the place. Whereas if you show it of the positive events, it is showing you a little bit more information, particularly about which detector would make sense as the primary detector. Okay, so there's that. Um, Again, we saw some negatives pop up as soon as we switched from auto spill to off. Of interest here is that you have the ability to do your cleanup gates on any set of parameters you want. We've tried to simplify this, that we give you a cleanup gate, and if you don't like it, you can just start drawing. And whatever you draw becomes the new cleanup gate. That's that. Just replace size. Similarly, if you are over here and you want to draw a gate, I guess I have to, sorry, boom, go over here. Oops, and I just, instead of drawing, move negative. You can just draw a gate and we'll try to guess whether it was negative or positive, but we give you the drop down to choose it, and then you just hit submit, and that's that. And then we automatically assign that gate as the negative population for that sample. So we've tried to make that pretty simple. You can also, as you can imagine, switch from histogram to some other parameter and work in 2D if you are very avant-garde in how you would like to set up your populations for unmixing or compensation. Okay. I should mention the checkbox next to each one of these files is indicating this particular control should be used to create a parameter. Where is U450, which we can actually use as an unstained. I could turn that off if I wanted. I could also check the colored circle next to it. The rainbow circles indicate this is a colored control, and the gray box, if you have it, says this is a unstained control. And if we look at negative populations for any sample that we uncheck the colored circle for. It now appears in a list of options on this dropdown that we could use to select in a dropdown as our negative for that particular population. So build your own list of negative populations. So if you have a variety of different unstains, you can use them, some beads, some cells, etc., some different populations. Yeah. We've got a hierarchy over here that you're using to control this. You can drag and drop a particular positive and negative to any sample in the list down below. So if I really liked that size gate I drew, for example, well, I think I'm not on that one anymore. Sorry, on the first one or somewhere in the list, you can just drag and drop to another sample. Okay. Scrolling works. And you can also, if you are not looking at any given portion of this, collapse a particular plot. So if you are done with looking at the spectral plot, you can give more screen space to the list down below. And likewise, if you're done looking at the plus minus gates or just want to see the list, you can open and close everything. Let's hit preview. Okay, 2 new messages. All right, discussion on QC. Yes, you can have multiple unstained controls. I assume that question came in before I point out you can tag each unstained control. Autofluorescence extraction works actually the exact same as in previous versions of FlowJo, where if you're using autospill, we had that U450 in there, which was actually unstained, and we're just going to use that and make a parameter. It's going to use linear regression to figure out any deviation from a flat line is probably due to autospill, and then you get an autospill parameter or an extraction parameter. If you were in traditional gate-based mode, you would pick we named it a little differently. It is just called unassigned, I believe, instead of true zero. And then you can do specific autofluorescence, as many different controls as you bring in to demonstrate a spectrum of autofluorescence. Huh. Can you copy paste from a different workspace into a new workspace? No, I do not think you can. That's a good idea, Daniela. You can do that in FlowJo 10, but only for gates. Okay. So we've got a preview going on here, similar to what we've seen before, in that you have a highlight going across the middle of your 100%. Everything else is your spillover. Across the top, you have your SSM, your total spread. Your total spread can only be used if you have done gate-based. It does not apply if you have done auto spill. You've got your similarity matrix. Total spill will also be heat mapped in this version. Let's go back to compensation spillover. Okay, so that's where where some of the similarities end. I think we've improved this thing. So down at the bottom here in the previews, and we can also, by the way, do this too here. We can give more space to our preview plots if we like. We have decided to follow the course example and pick a specific compensator parameter to show. I think one of the biggest complaints I heard was that our attempt to do the full half diagonal matrix for previews made those unreadable. So now we'll focus on one parameter at a time and make these very readable, I think. As you go through and look at varieties of parameters, you can overlay or not the uncompensated. You can go dot plot or contour. We can use the hierarchy to select other samples to preview. We can switch over to full stained and take a look at some of our full stained. You can pick a specific population, like let's look at our good events, and everything that we're choosing is also going to be reaffirmed over here of what are we looking at. Yeah, the bad events aren't so good to look at for assessing whether our compensation is okay. Let's not show them. You can give this whole screen, and you've got zoom in and zoom out capabilities. So I've got everything already on the screen, but for like a really big panel, you might want to zoom out a little bit and make sure you can see a plot of everything if you would like to do so. Okay, this applies also upstairs. You can drag this down and you can see more of your numbers. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, etc. So I think we've made compensation and unmixing a little more friendly, particularly for viewing and evaluating. A variety of ways to evaluate, all sorts of plots that you can make. All right, let us actually create a matrix, and then I will show you one more tool that I think you're going to like. Okay, so okay, just checking the questions. Serena looks like she answered one. Okay, I've created a matrix. If I look under my comp matrices and I have an additional one, it is called matrix because I'm not a creative namer. I can click matrix. You'll notice I now have a little edit button. You get the default warning that says don't do this. So I'm going to say I'm doing it anyway, as I've done, many, many times. Okay, and the bit that I want to show here is that this unmixing correction comes into play. So you can still hand edit if you want, but I feel like as the world moves more spectrally, it makes it really difficult to edit a matrix if you're editing parameter into detector, and many, many, many more detectors are present. So we've actually just simplified this thing so that you could, and let's go down to good events on this or positives. And maybe let's actually look at some full stain stuff to see if there's something that maybe we want to edit a little bit. Yeah, okay. So I think we've attempted to make it a lot easier to edit, and that will just essentially give you a correction number. That's just as a percentage on the, from 0 to 100. You can click a particular plot to say that's the one that I want to edit, and it'll highlight up in the matrix. And then up here, if you double click, you can type in a number. And I think I've typed in 10. So I guess we have to work on the not yet entered number there. And you can see, maybe I didn't want to make that 10, but you can see the adjustment to the plot down below. And so it's, I think, a lot more straightforward if you're spectral to make edits here, and especially a lot more straightforward to find the thing that it is you would like to do it. Yes, we can do negative numbers as well as maybe we should have here. Okay, so negative and too much. I'm working it just in too large a number. I mean, it doesn't matter, but whatever. Let's just take that back to 5. So negative numbers are important. We do believe that they will occur when you have a skew distribution. It's not everything is perfectly symmetric, and sometimes the skew goes the wrong way, and you need to do essentially anti-compensation. So it's in there. All right. 1038. Gotta move. Okay, so that was unmixing and compensation. I'm gonna then except for how do I apply it? Drag and drop, like always. If I want to take my matrix and apply it to a group, I drag it to a group. If I want to drag it to a single sample, I drag it to a single sample, and then you will notice down below the little grid that's always been there in FlowJo, right next to the sample, is now colored orange because my matrix that I applied is orange. You will also notice that if you edit a matrix, it gets the name matrix edit. And then if you rename it, it still has a little star next to it to indicate that this one was an edited matrix. Okay, cool. Let's get back to the graph window a little bit. There's a few things I want to show you. Down below, we are looking at all of our samples. Sorry, we're looking at all these plots are of view by sample across a group. As I mentioned before, there are other choices like view by parameter. So if we wanted to just look at the first sample, but look at all different parameter combos, we can do that. I am going to minimize this a little bit to give us a little more space there. Um, Over here, we have parameter sets that are being displayed. And so I mentioned before that we can use different parameter sets for different things. So if I wanted to batch across X, or batch across Y, take your pick. And Y I've already picked as the T cell functional, then the Y are just going to show the parameters that are in this list here. So I kind of like that. So you can get a view of all the samples, all the parameters, take your pick. There's a few other options. We'll come to the image wall version of this when I drop in some image data. And there's a by ancestry that you can use once we've made a few gates. Okay, let's make a few gates. So I'm going to take the y-axis and let's do scatter to start. Maybe a little forward scatter area versus H. Gating tools are just as you would expect. Those tools are good to go. Um, let's call it single cells with the exception of when we get to imaging, we'll notice the reticle, which will show you pictures of your cells in these plots. Okay, double clicking on a particular gate will isolate those cells. Let's go to sample mode again down here so that we're seeing our single cells gate for all of the different samples right now in the multi-study data group. Oh, and what was I working in? There we go. I was working in full stained. Okay, so let us also, actually we can just work in full stained. That works. Okay, you'll notice that the purple gate full stained is indicating that I drew it on the full stained as opposed to the experiment data group. Color will indicate where a group is drawn. Clicking on it will control what's shown over here. You can copy paste or drag and drop that gate to any other group. So if I right click on it, I have the ability to copy single cells and I could paste it back to experiment data if I wanted to make everything on experiment data, or to one of the downstream groups if I just wanted that gate to appear on some other portion of the hierarchy in a downstream group. For now, let's just work with it. Okay. I am going to then say, let's look at CD3. At the moment, I've got comp and uncomp parameters in there. Maybe I want to go to X and say, just show me the compensator. Maybe the same for Y, so that we simplify our lists and we can search for these things. Let's go again, CD3, pick that one out. I do have a live dead marker in here because thank you, Fred Hutch. We'll pick that. We'll notice, okay, I don't know. Maybe we've got some cells off the edge here and we'd like to do a little transforming. You can hit the T button here. You can also hit the T button over here. You can control which parameter set here that you're looking at. So let's limit these to compensate it. Here's your drop-down menu. You can click the checkbox to apply all, or we can go hunt for a specific one. We could also type in what we're looking for. If it's the live dead marker, we can pick that. At the moment, we had the first one highlighted of CD3, so that's indicating you can highlight multiple ones just by clicking, or if we just want to look at one, we can go down to that. So we're looking at live dead here, controls for adjusting your transform right there. Let's give that a little extra width basis and hit apply. Okay, I'm pleased. Let's go with that. Question from Will. I assume the experimental data group is basically the all samples in V10, except comp controls removed. Yes, which means that the group upstream of experimental data, acquired data, which has the compensation data included, is really the actual, well, sorry, now I'm on acquired data, is actually the equivalent of the all samples group from V10. Okay. All right. So we're on TIM3 versus TIM3. Nice. Let us look at, since we are now inside, oh, I didn't make a CD3 gate. CD3 versus our live dead, which I was in the middle of doing when I accidentally decided to take a visit to the acquired data group. And let's just throw a little gate on there to grab our live T cells. How are we doing? 43. Okay. There's a lot to show. I want to keep moving here. All right. So there's our live T cells. Double click on that. Let's see. It's worth pointing out. I'm going to just throw 4 and 8 on these axes because they'll make, a nice like, ooh, where should I make that gate kind of plot. We will show virtual concatenation as well. If I click this button here and we go from 1 test tube to 3, and you'll note that the statistics over here, and oops, I want it live T cells as a subset of single cells. Let's drag and drop that there. Okay, that the numbers indicating how many events there were, so indicating drag and drop works, by the way, and delete works for when you put your gate in the wrong spot. So we're like 5 million here. If I go back to the single event, it'll show, okay, so just for the highlighted sample, which in the moment is healthy 01, I've got like 401,000. So there's your indicator. You get a whole lot more dots. You get numbers that indicate you're working either the virtually concatenated version of this data or an individual one. I find this view kind of nice for a variety of things. It'll become useful for t-SNE, it'll become useful for XShift, but also if I just want to put some kind of gate on that I know is going to be good for all of the data in a particular group, I'm seeing all the data at once. So there's my quad gate with everything in it. Okay. Question, can we make the plot where we are working bigger? Can we have more than one plot open in V10? So one primary plot, lots of satellite plots. Right now we don't scale that one up. That seems like a good idea to do for the future, which requires some additional resolution. Good questions, Edgar. Okay, let's hit our CD4s. There's something else I would like to show here. So maybe we'll do like, I don't know, 103, 127. Perhaps let's go back to our virtual concatenated mode. Okay, maybe we want to grab something here like the T-regs. Let's do one more thing. I'm going to go over to my controls of what plot I'm looking at. There's a variety of different plot types, most of which you will recognize. And so we could do a heat map stats plot. and that activates the Z axis, and we could throw some other useful marker. Maybe we'll put like 25 on this, and then we will automatically switch to heat map mode. So, okay. So probably, yeah, we want to include in our gate the cells down here, not the really high for 25 if we were going to make some T-reg gate. Maybe just call it something like this. Okay, there we go. And oh, question, and Serena got it. Thank you, Serena. Greatly appreciate it. All right. So there's our T-regs. Cool. Uh, let's flip off virtually concatenate it. And I think that is probably most of the things that I wanted to show for now in the graph gallery. Let's move on to some platforms. So I'm going to go down and pick the T-reg population and open up a platform. We can do T-SNE and X-shift. Let us do, and just for funsies too, I'm going to switch our parameter sets to all. If you run a T-SNE, it'll automatically pick T-SNE parameters and show them here. You just can't have filter down to a parameter set that doesn't include T-SNE parameters. So let's go T-SNE. Okay. In here, I have parameter sets at the top as a nice way to select things. So we could just build a T-SNE based on the functional markers of T cells. You've got some similar choices that you've seen before in version 10, where you can do the approximate or the exact version of the calculated distance between the cells. We no longer have the option for fast Fourier transform because that was just better almost all the time. Pretty much all the time. It was just faster. So that's just the default now. We don't even put a choice in for that. Down here, we have downsampling if you want to do it. So you could choose to downsample in a variety of manners, including none if you don't want to, random, uniform, etc. And then it's going to show you the total number of events that are going to be used to make this T-SNE plot. We are obviously going to use virtual concatenation as there's only 2,000 events in this one population. So, this is all of the events in the entire experiment in the T-reg population that it's being used. And it tells you what percent of the events you're using, so that if you would happen to choose a downsample number that actually caused downsampling, you'd want to know, what fraction of events you're factoring in. Nicely, the embedding is built into this version as well. So if you create a T-SNE using some downsampled number, you will still get a T-SNE plot for all of the events in the selected population, just with the rest of them essentially upsampled back in and used, and embed is used to put them into the correct plot. UMAP is on the to-do list. I think we will probably build it right into this platform as well, as it is equally popular to T-SNE. And probably the rest of the dimensionality reduction, maybe, will end up, whenever we figure out the plugin architecture, will end up in that. Um, TBD, how the plugin architecture will work. We have some plans. And I think the only other exception might be Fate, which adds, with a trajectory analysis to this, that might be worth building indirectly. Anyway, let's hit run on the T-SNE. So that'll be pretty quick. Let's see. Can we have a window for the layout editor and have the workspace at the same time? So at the moment, we are totally full windowed. The layout editor, which is replaced with the report editor, is a different window. We will work on the keyboard shortcut to just Command L and send things to there. It'd be nice to have an abort button just in case I start a high dimension analysis. It takes too long. Thomas, yes, coming. Siri, if new people are starting to use FlowJo, would you suggest them starting to use v11? Siri, I think that is going to be a question of what exactly they want to do. If they are working on cell cycle, for example, then no. If they are working in a high parameter format, I think v11 is probably more amenable to spectral, high parameter data and so forth. If they're okay with using specifically T-SNE as opposed to T-SNE or UMAP, and specifically X-shift, which I'll show next, as opposed to other clustering algorithms, then I would recommend them starting with 11. I think we have done a nice job of making it a little easier to use if you are a new user. I think we've, to be determined, the users will tell us, but I think we've made it a little more straightforward in how things work, and how things arrange themselves in the program, and some simplifications for, the parameter sets that I keep coming back to, of focusing on a smaller part of a very big experiment. I think is a really nice way to go if you've got a high parameter experiment. Okay. Let's also run. I'm going to click on that T-reg population. Let's run X shift. I'm clicking X shift. It's got the same setup here where you can downsample if you want. It's got the same setup where you can choose a subset of parameters. I'm going to choose T cell functional and I'm going to say go. And I'm going to let this thing run. Okay. I guess back to Edgar. I didn't answer your question, I don't think, fully or particularly well, in that I should mention, ooh, one X shift cluster. Hmm. Oh, I did not run it on the VCP. Let us run that on the virtually concatenated population while we talk. Sure, let's go. Okay, you used the word workspace, and I was just thinking of the main part of the program. If you meant the hierarchy and everything on the left, that just always stays. So if you want to get to the report editor, the hierarchy and everything in it is right there. Everything is draggable and droppable. So yeah, you can't actually see this view, but you can just drag in the population that holds that view, and then it'll appear in the reports. Okay, so let's jump right to reports then, since we are here anyway. So we have a pretty big canvas that we'll start with. Reports are live. So anything you're doing, moving a gate, adjusting a population, and so forth, all of that is going to be live, as well as batched versus source view. So this is currently the source view. If you hit view batch, we'll see a batch of this. Let me just drag a few things in. If you want to see, the X shift results for our virtually concatenated population, you could do so. Over here, the controls are on the right. So at the moment, we're looking at our various page sizes. The default is custom with a really big canvas. You could move down to a particular size page if you wanted to, if you had a goal where this is going to go in the end. The next control box here is what parameters you're looking at for the selected, parameter. So we could do something like come in here. You could use parameter sets here. You could also just use the search if I want to see the t-SNE parameters of my X shift results. Okay, so look like two main divisions popped out within this data set that we see. We can explore what those are in a variety of ways, and maybe the tables, the charts, and the reports are going to be a way to do that, and that might be where we head next. Okay, so all the standard controls here that you would expect, what kind of plot type, font, etc., alignment, and so forth. Let's see. Uh, yeah, why don't we move over to, we'll leave this here for now and come back to it. There is some nice interactivity with charts and tables that let's show. So the table icon is here. And if I wanted to add some, whoops, sorry. If I wanted to add some columns to this, I'm going to drag in populations. So I'll drag in my two X shift populations to get by default frequency of parent. You can control the default, whether it's account, frequency of total, or frequency of parent. And there is also a just add whatever other stat you want. If you want to add rows, then you'll drag in either files or an entire group full of files. So let's add all the full stain to it. Okay, and we've got our first table. So we've got all of the files in full stained versus the two populations using the default statistic. Other stats you could do, and you can multiplex here. We could do something like the median, and we're doing it for population X shift 1. Okay, that works. The median of population X shift 1. And let's do it for a handful of these markers. Let's do ICOS. We'll add that in. Add stat, we could click on X shift 2. So again, we're using the hierarchy. We could do the median of, and I guess just to demonstrate that you can multi-select, let's do a couple things. Maybe we want ICOS and CXCR6. Okay, so we've got some medians, we've got some frequencies. Let's add a keyword. I'm going to put in a keyword. I'm going to search for the condition. Cool. Add that. And so we've added some text to explain what the files are, some statistics. You can organize by whichever one you want. You can call the table something. T-regs. Sure, why not? Okay. And this is ready to go. There's a variety of things you can do. You can export. You can come over to the charts. This is the fun one, I think. You can pick the table you want to work on. So there's T-regs, the only one that I have currently, so that's cool. You can choose how to organize this. Let's organize the data. What kind of categories do we want to look at? Let's organize by condition. And then let's pick what stats we want to add. How about the frequencies of parent? So I'll add the two frequencies for the two different clusters. Now we're comparing them for flu, healthy, RSV, and SARS-CoV because we use condition. And we left all these things turned on. If you want to remove one of the conditions, well, that's interesting, but I don't want to look at flu. Just uncheck it. And we can take the flu out. You can add that back in. If I prefer the other orientation, I can switch here to say, here are my two clusters. Now show me all the conditions as colored bars. If you wanted these as separate charts, you can do that. I think I like them as one chart. Okay, so we can do that. Sure, why not? We'll leave it in that side view. I'm going to go over here to stats. We can do comparisons. So you've got t-test or Wilcoxon rank sum, a non-parametric test. You can say what category do you want to compare against? Condition sounds good. What's the baseline? Let's pick the healthy folks as the baseline. You've got some tunables, but then let's show asterisks for when there's a significant difference, a line connecting the comparisons, and the p-value. Okay, so not a lot of big differences comparing the percent of cells in each of those two clusters across our various conditions. Fair enough. If we wanted to make a new table or new chart, hit the plus, you'll get an extra chart, and we can come back in here and do whatever we want in terms of let's start with T-regs, let's do conditions, but this time let's do the medians. I'm going to pick my three medians. Okay, there we go. So one very low median across all the conditions it looks like. Again, we could switch it to compare particular medians and use the colors for the conditions. Up to you how you'd like to do it. But now we've got two different charts, and you can control all of them just by checking and unchecking. Okay, so let's take a return to reports. And I just want to mention that then charts and tables are right here, and we can drag them in. And let us zoom out a little bit. Ooh, turned into a big table. Really big table. One more time. Geez, very large table. Oh, because I have median of blah, 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 blah. All right. Note to self to be able to simplify the names here. Let's just go get a chart or two charts and add them in. Okay, so that is one big report where maybe you add the tables, you add the charts. You can control which page batch. So if I maybe think that's going to be my title page of my report and I don't want to batch it, I could hit the little gear icon down here and remove it from batching. Oops, I'm stuck. Ooh, and the gear icon appears to be stuck as well. Okay, see you later, Serena. Oh yeah, we are just about at time. Let me stop clicking on that gear. Let me just start a new chart so I can show you a new report so I can just show you batching and how that's going to work. We can come back over here to our set of samples. Let's drag in, let's see, live T cells, maybe make an overlay of these quads. Let's take this back to single sample mode so that we can actually batch and have something new pop up. An overlay is created just by dragging and dropping on top of stuff, of course, similar to everything we've ever done. If you drag in one of these nodes, the TCs or the X shift, you get the particular report for that item. So there's our t-SNE plot for these. All right, we can, yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, so I've got three plots for one of the samples. Batching controls are down here. You can batch from a particular level of the data or particular group by hitting apply experiment selection. So if it mattered, that'll do it. So we're in full stained now. You can batch by population. I don't know if I'll have time to show that, but we can probably do one really quickly next. Let's first go by group. You can choose to iterate by sample, by keyword, but now you can choose to iterate by statistic. And then if we pick a stat, we can put them in order based on some stat. So if you want to see the highest responders to the lowest be the order things appear in, cool. We've got the same kind of discriminator bit where you can pick an order based on keywords or again, stats. If it's not at least got this many cells, I don't want to see it. You can do that. Intervals here, rows and columns for how many should appear per page are there. And if we hit source, view batch, then we see all of our samples spread out how we've asked for it. So I've said, please have 4 per page. And that meant we had to have 5 pages since we've got 20 samples. And I will move through a little bit quickly and maybe give it some time to render. And that's showing the batch. You can save a copy of the batch as a report that becomes a new one in the list here as a new source report so that it is essentially fixed. You can also go back to the source and it's all live. If you want to make an adjustment here and then just view the batch again, it'll just adjust your batch report so that it's really quick and easy to go back and forth and make changes in any kind of final report that you'd like to produce. Okay, let me do a super quick batch by population. I'm going to hit one more report and then we'll wrap this thing up. So batch by population is particularly useful, I think, to look at clustering results. So I'm going to drag in this Treg population. Okay. And I'm going to just pop one of the X shift populations on top of that. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here and lock down the Treg population. Sorry. There we go. Touchpads. I'm going to set it as control. Right, left, blah, blah, blah. All right. And then batch by population. So what that's going to do is take the parent population here. And here we go. I've chosen it based on the hierarchy and say, let's show all of its children. So there's only 2 children here, so it'll be a less exciting batch. But we can go look at that. And actually, let's go back to the source and say, how about 2 per page? Zoom controls, move out of the way. Okay, so we've got 2 per page and we've shown population 1 and population 2, and I fixed the T-regs in the background just so that there's some context for them. So if you get a big list of clusters, we can actually just batch all the clusters. So if you make any kind of interesting plots on a per cluster basis, we can show it. You can use that for any part of the hierarchy and that works. Let's see, we have a question about can we see, oh, okay, there's a few questions here. Charts and tables are live. You can subsample in all of the tools that are done for calculations. If you were going to subsample just for the purpose of showing a plot, I would probably just use like a contour plot or something. And can you show some imaging data? Let's go overtime. Let's go a few minutes overtime. My apologies if you have to go. I do want to just, I like that. That's a good idea. Let's just do a new workbench. Sure, why not? I'll save it for funsies. Sure, I'll just leave it have the name. They're .flowjo files, as you noticed. Okay, and new workbench. Okay. Da, 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 da. Okay, so just dragging in some cell synapse data, and then let's just get right to it. We could switch to an image gallery here. If we click the image button over here, then we immediately pull up the gallery. You can do things like, move these over to give more space and primacy to it. You've got all your imaging controls over here. So if we wanted to look at this and say, boy, there's an awful lot of background in that green parameter, you can click on it. You can take that down to its actual signal. Maybe, I don't remember offhand what all these were, but we could take the background down. Actually, we're not using that one, so it didn't matter. This is the other one that actually has real background. Yeah, let's do that. You can turn on or off light loss through here, things like this. I'm going to leave light loss off. Maybe it's just use side scatter as our way to view the images. Okay, move that a little bit. Anyway, so we've got all our images here. Um, a lot of what this experiment was doing was looking at the interaction of two cells. We could do some gates, for example, maybe to get down to a better population with less junk in it. And so if we then click on these, we will filter our image wall to that. We're using the image wall right now just in order of event, but we could do something like, let's see the eccentricity of one of our measured fluorescent markers and sort instead of ascending by descending. So maybe we'll get a few more like two cells stuck together. Imaging parameters have their own parameter set, so we could a little more quickly move through and show things like, let's look at the, big fan of eccentricity versus radial moment. Okay, and then you could pick some unusual ones or good ones and do things like that. You can use the image picker here to take a look at any particular given cell. Click on it to highlight it in the list there and over on the list on the right. Well, that was sort of a dullish. All right. Anyway, so that's what we're working on right now. Just getting a really nice big info into this program so that you can give images primacy if you want. Um, yeah, and then building controls and images very much what Chorus is doing, and then start layering the more refined tools. Thomas, thank you. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, let's wrap there. We are 7 minutes over. I will hang out for a few more minutes and just see if any more questions pop into the chat. But that was your first look at 11, and I think I got with some help from Serena most of the questions that popped up in time in the chat. Great questions. Love the engagement, everybody. Be very excited to see um, anybody who comes to Cyto. It'll be my first time both getting out of the house after a little while. So happy to see you make connections. Oh, thank you all. All right. Well, all the comments are just, they're just nice. And so no questions to answer. Okay, there is one on when can you post the recording. Typically, it takes a day or two for it to process and end up on the website. I should mention that since I just sort of said, yeah, 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 on the website. But if you go to FlowJo, Learn, Webinars, there's they're searchable now. So you can search in here. There's the featured webinar, which we just did, the upcoming webinar, and down below that, we can probably zoom out this a little bit, are all the previously recorded webinars. And so this one will end up parked there shortly. All right. With that, let's wrap up. Oh, is it right to assume that there will be FlowJo for beginning tutorials coming in the future? Yes, absolutely. Amongst other things. So I think we've done a pretty good job with the documentation. Fingers crossed. There's a full set of documentation for 11 as it stands at the moment. And I'm going to open this thing up at Cyto, and then I'm going to do the first 11 training. So Sebastian, June 19th. There'll be another one on here on v11. Um, Not a band, anything else that we've done in the past. The next one is, Dylan giving some kind of high dimensional talk on plugins. So we'll keep up with the support for 10, but I want to make sure, yeah, we have a lot of like, here's 11, it's brand new, and use the hierarchy to control everything, which might be unfamiliar, but I think is a better way to do it kind of stuff. All right. FlowJo is excellent. Oh, thank you for saying so. All right. Very good. Yes, Gina, there are webinars for everything. There are short videos for Flow AI, particularly on the documentation page, I believe there's a here to how to do Flow AI, and somewhere within our webinars, you could go with, let's see, is probably advanced tools or advanced analysis. Let's go advanced analysis with FlowJo. And there was we did a whole suite of just like all the QC tools in one webinar. There it is. Well, that one was Peacock. Well, I will swear it is in there somewhere of here's all the QC tools. Let me see if I have a way to just QC. Oops, that was just Q. Just QC get me there. Huh. I wonder if we've taken that one down. There's about a 2 year cycle where we assume that things have gotten old if 2 years have passed. I wonder if the last all the QC tools, that doesn't seem right. Anyway, Janina, if I find it and get the link, I'll just email to you. How can I get licensed versions of, not sure if follow Kalita? How can get licensed version of needed concerning 11 verification? Yes, Sunil, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to explain Kalita. I will also enter my email address again in here. If anybody has questions, john.flowjo@bd.com. That is how to you can just write me. And Sunil, the free trials, once we release 11, will switch to 11. We've been giving out, 30-day trials for version 10 for the last 12 years. And once 11 becomes the newest version, that's what we'll give out the trials for. You just write in and request uh, dun, 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 sign up for free. Actually, sorry, this BD Research Cloud free trial, FlowJo, and that'll be it. Free 30-day trials are just going to be here, and it'll just switch to 11. All right, this time for real. Now that we're only, 12 minutes over, I'm going to wrap up. Can't wait to see you all in the future. Have a great one. Enjoy the rest of your week.